You have probably heard me ask this question before. I'll ask it again. If this is your first time listening to the Winning at Life Behind Enemy Lines podcast, drop me a comment and just say, "This is my first time listening. I want to welcome everybody in and on to the Winning at Life Behind Enemy Lines podcast." I'm your host, hashtag one time. And fellas, on today's show, guys, on today's show, we're checking in. Yeah, we are checking in today. This show is specifically about men. We don't mean to leave the women out, but this show today is particularly geared toward, aligned with, and for men and what we are experiencing and going through today. Welcome back to another episode of Winning at Life Behind Enemy Lines. And the title of today's show is Brick by Brick, Building the Foundation for the Men that we were meant to be. And today we're just talking about men situations, the things that we go through. We're talking about too many of us right now are living what I would consider wrecked lives, looking as if they are wrecked lives and there's no way out. There's no way for us to rebuild our life, get back concentrated on the things that we are supposed to do, get back concentrated on what our purpose is so we can sojourn on. I'm not saying that every young man's life, and when I say young men, I mean everybody from teenage years on up to 60 years old or even older. I'm talking about the things that all men, in particularly African American men, are going through and are confronted with on today. And if your life is grand right now, we salute you. Sojourn on. But for the masses of us, there are things that we are being confronted with today that has and gives us reason for pause and ask the question, where are we headed? What are we doing with our lives? We're going to do sort of a DIY, a do it yourself project on ourselves. We're going to look at our own selves in the mirror. Yeah, the title again of today's show is Brick by Brick, Building the Foundation for the Men that we were meant to be. You know, it's a lot of failed relationships, lack of purpose, lack of vision, and worst of all, feeling as though that we have no support in where we're going. And again, this is no slight at all on our ladies. This is no slight at all on our sisters. I'm just merely talking about men today because let's be real. Nobody that I've seen of late is coming to save us. But that doesn't mean that we can't rebuild step by step and brick by brick until we become the men that we were all destined to be and living in our purpose. So let's go. Let's get into it. There are a multitude of reasons that I believe that men go up against and are up against in life, a lot of the things that we are. But there is a segment of the men population that, even with our current administration, all of the executive orders, there is nothing in it for men. And I mean specifically for young men, middle aged men, and even older African American men. There's nothing in it that is going to come and save us. Our foundations are broke. Where are we going wrong? Where are we going wrong? Too many men today, too many men out here are like a house with a cracked foundation, built on unstable ground. I get it. Maybe you didn't have a dad or an uncle or a coach. Maybe you didn't have somebody to help you along in life. Maybe you didn't. But it's time to understand that no one is coming to save us. We must build our lives and rebuild our lives and continue on behind enemy lines in the fight by any means necessary in order to become the men that we were meant to be. But we've got to get off of the shaky ground. What do I mean when I say we've got to get off the shaky ground? One, we have so many failed relationships and fatherhood struggles. If you look at the population, over half, well over half now, of African American men and women, relationships and marriages will end up in divorce. It's up a huge percent from 60 years ago, let's just say. We can just use that as an example. Our failed relationships has held us captive. And again, I say, if you have a relationship right now, and I experienced this during COVID, if you went through COVID and you had someone to go through COVID with, you were in a relationship or you had kids in the house or you had someone that lived with you, it made it a little easier. If you were alone during COVID, that was a tough time for people who were alone. And although it was a tough time, it was also a time of reckoning for a lot of men and a lot of women. I thought for many days, what am I going to do after this pandemic? How am I going to rebuild my life? How am I going to seek all over again my purpose? But relationships, and I talk about relationships. I talk about the divine order of relationships. You got to have a relationship with God. You got to have a relationship with yourself. We must have a relationship with our family if we can. And then you have a relationship with the community. But relationships has kicked us around and slapped us around. Failed relationships with our kids. I don't know if many people understand that our kids are in a time that can be a great time, or it can be a time where they're left behind enemy lines to fend for themselves. There's nothing in the current administration's executive orders that speaks to our kids. And that is all the more the reason that we need to have positive, growing relationships with our kids so that we can guide them into the next generation, into the next century. But I can tell you now, that is a tough situation to be in. Raising kids today is tough. Why? Because 63% of African American kids are raised in single family homes. And this is no knock on who's raising them, but let's keep it 100 today. Kids come out, and we have seen this. Kids come out a lot better off with more opportunity and chances when they're raised in a home by a mom and a dad, when they're raised in a home with two parents. We've got to get our relationships in order. Our personal relationships, our spiritual relationships, our romantic relationships, our relationships on our job. We've got to align our relationships again so that we can see that we can make it, but we've got to pull it together. Yeah, I know how you feel. You gave everything in a relationship and left empty. Or maybe you've got kids, but you feel disconnected to them, or you feel resentment, regret, and even anger, but you don't have any answers. Our spiritual connection is lacking. And by spiritual connection, I mean, I believe that every man and every woman ought to have a relationship with their higher power, a relationship with God, so he can lead and guide you. But we don't pray anymore like we used to. We don't ask for guidance in our lives in the areas that we need them the most. We don't meditate. There's no routine to get up and meditate. I do it every day. I've been doing it for years. And you've heard me say I got it from my parents. They would get up early in the morning and study and read God's word. And I picked up on that as an adult. I get up every day and try to put something positive in my head because it's difficult out here. But brick by brick, I believe that we can rebuild. Brick by brick, I believe that we can get back and retransform ourselves in relationships. I believe that we can do that. We're not living life, we're reacting to life. And that puts us further away from what our purpose and our vision needs to be. And speaking of vision, what is the vision? Everybody has their own vision. I get it. Just like everyone has their own gift. But what is the vision collectively? What is it? If you look at legislation that's being passed right now, and whether you are for, against vouchers, whether you are for them or whether you are against them, you gotta say it's gonna hurt the public school system, which is already struggling right now to maintain teachers to teach our kids, which is already struggling right now financially to meet the goals, to pay the teachers, to educate our kids. Right now, the voucher systems that we're seeing coming down the pipe and all types of legislation in all across the country and states, it's going to hurt the public school system. Where's the catch net? Are we going to be leaving them behind enemy lines? But if men who have a purpose can get back on our game, if we can begin to rebuild our lives again, reinvest in ourselves, brick by brick, I believe that we can become the men that we were meant to be. But having no goals, having no vision, having no plan. And by plan, I mean, what are you going to, let's say you are in a relationship. What is the plan for that relationship? It's time out for just I'm going to hit it and quit it. It's time out right now. Either you have someone in your corner and you have a plan to lead. You have a plan to lead your kids. You have a plan to recapture the relationship that you truly want to have with your kids, or we just going to waste away by the wayside. But we've got to build it, rebuild it, brick by brick. Another area where we're just lacking. You know, years ago, you could see another man in the store, the grocery store, the wherever, car wash, and it was us, you know, what's up, my brother? What's up, man? We don't speak to each other like that anymore. There's no longer a connection between the brotherhood. When I was coming along as a young manager, when I was coming along, I had many mentors, and I used to thank God for all the mentors I had. Mr. Travis Wortham, who taught me a whole lot. Mr. Robert Lewis, who taught me a whole lot. Mr. Carl Fretwell, who taught me a whole lot. Mr. Wilbur Rogers, who taught me a whole lot, who mentored me, who showed me what it looked like to work hard, to expect to get something out of life, to be somebody. I had mentors, but now we hardly don't want to get together if it's not an NBA game, if it's not a football game. We're worried about if our team is going to make the NBA play-in. The play-in right now is for us to get back to the brotherhood, building our relationships brick by brick. And I know we've had setbacks. There's been a lot of setbacks in all of our lives. I got receipts, trust me. I just recently had a setback, but you know, I can't sit there and not do anything. I can't sit there and say, I don't have the strength to rebuild my life, to reposition myself. Life is a journey, and trust me, it'll take you on turns, across bridges, in and through jungles. Life is difficult, but wanting to outweighs the difficulty in the life. But we've got to stop allowing the tail to wag the dog. We've got the tail wagging the dog syndrome. And what is that? That is life dragging us around instead of us leading our lives into the things that we know that we can do, to the person, the men that we know that we can be, having a purpose and a plan and a vision in our life, rebuilding our life brick by brick. And guess what? We can do that. Let's talk about how we do that. One, we've got to get back to our spirituality. If you've never had one, get in touch with yourself. Get in touch with yourself and understand where you are right now in your life. Do that man in the mirror thing. I'm talking about that DIY project that we need to have on ourselves, that looking in the mirror and doing a complete and total up and down evaluation of where we are and where we want to be and charting a course of how we get there. We've got to get back spiritually, or we've got to establish a foundation. We've got to reconnect with ourselves. We've got to define our vision and our mission. What do we want to become? What legacy do we want to lead? What legacy do we want to leave in our relationships? What legacy do we want to leave with our kids? What legacy do we want to leave as a contribution to not only our people, but to this great country that we live in? And yeah, we got some jacked up, it's toe up from the flow up right now. And that's all the more reason that we need to, as men, collectively get back in touch with ourselves. We've got to find mentors again. I'm not really interested in hearing close them doors. Close them doors. What I'm interested in is open up those windows. Open up those doors. Lift those garage doors up. Connect with other men. Connect, because life is hard. I'm interested in building a strong foundation. I could care less who did what last week or who has anything coming about. We all are behind enemy lines, but men and specifically are in the foxhole behind enemy lines, economically, educationally, technology-wise. Y'all think this AI thing is a joke? Y'all think that replacing humans with robots is a joke? No, we need to get that memo and we need to read it. So we need to start training and retraining ourselves for our 21st century, for our kids and for ourselves. We've got to start back building it brick by brick in order to become the men that we were meant to be. If you've got to join a men's group, if you've got to join a fraternity, if you've got to join a church, if you've got to get active in the community. It warmed my heart a couple weeks ago. I was reading a story out of the metropolitan area that I live, where a school invited men to come to the school to have breakfast or either lunch with all of the young men who did not have a father. Those things are going on. But in a broad perspective, I'm just simply asking today, as we build brick by brick, what is the plan? What do we plan on doing? What's our strength right now? Where are we concentrating our efforts to improve our culture? There's much to complain about. There's plenty. If you just turn on your TV and watch any news show, if you listen to a lot of the podcasts, everybody can tell us what's wrong in relationships. Everybody can prophesy and prophesy what's coming. Where are the answers? Where is the effort? Where is the collective effort to help men get their lives back on track? In order for us to take control, we've got to be disciplined on a very high level in order to do that. We've got to take responsibility for what we haven't done, if we haven't done anything. But then you've got to take credit if you have, but we've got to take responsibility for what we have not done as men, as individual men and men collectively. We've got to reposition our eyesight on what our goals and what our purpose is. We've got to grab a brick. We've got to grab the mortar. We've got to stick together. We've got to do it brick by brick. And that DIY project that we're doing on ourselves will spill out into the community of men who are looking for people just to understand where they are and to help them along. I've got a closing message on how we build our lives, rebuild our lives, brick by brick again. Look here, guys. Life, it'll break you down if you let it. But today is the day that we start relaying the bricks, one at a time. Small habits, lead to big transformations. Let's stop drifting. Let's stop waiting, because no one is coming to save us. Let's stop letting life drag us. Let's stop letting the tail wag the dog. This is our time to rebuild ourselves mentally, spiritually, emotionally. It's not about where you've been. It's about where we're going. If you've enjoyed the show today, like, share, and hit the notification bell. And don't forget, in the description, if you'd like to wear Behind Enemy Lines, if you'd like to just present to the world that you're in the fight, go into the description and click on the order form and purchase Winning at Life Behind Enemy Lines merchandise. And don't forget, the show is weekly. You can catch us on YouTube, Winning at Life Behind Enemy Lines. And we look forward to the next episode. But don't forget, if we are going to win the battle, if we're going to build it brick by brick, we've got to stay in the fight. Peace, and I'll see you on the next episode.